Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, it's on everybody's lips at the moment. Today we're going to be talking about post-Brexit due diligence. What does that mean, and what could it mean for your organisation, for your business? What should you be doing? And of course, Article 50 hasn't been triggered yet, but what's going to happen when it is? What should you be doing, and what should you be doing to prepare before Article 15 is actually triggered? My guest in the studio today is Linda Bazant. Not only is she a part of Business Connections Live, she's also a lawyer and an advisor and consultant for organisations who are looking at getting their organisations sorted out and in the appropriate position for Brexit. In other words, she's looking at due diligence when it comes to the whole Brexit thing. Linda, it's lovely to have you with us. On the other side of the camera,
yes,
for you today.
It is very unusual.
A lot of people don't really understand the significance of this. We've had Benjamin Bajaram. He was on the program a few weeks back, and he said, "Sit back, don't panic."
Christian Bajaram.
Christian Bajaram. There you go, Christian Bajaram. But he said, "Sit back, don't panic," because we're a long way out. But to a certain extent, there are a lot of things that we could be doing today to make certain that we're going to be in the right place when it comes to being ready for Brexit in whatever form it takes.
That's very true, Steve, and he's absolutely right. We're not talking about panic. We're talking about being ready. And as you know, businesses generally are looking at their budgets all of the time. They're looking at the way that the business is operating. This is no different. What we're saying is that once Article 50 is triggered, that Brexit will come into force in 2019, and we need to be ready. So we need to be looking at things like our contracts. Some people have already got very long-term contracts. So now, for example, if you've got a 5-year contract, it may well be fine up until the end of 2019. But after that, when we're no longer part of Europe, are there EU regulations within your contracts that you need to address now?
Well, I mean, before we go down the whole raft of just looking at contracts, I mean, it seems to me that from what's been said, that there are a lot of business owners that are out there at the moment, and they are saying to themselves, we're not certain what within our business that we've actually got to resolve and what within our business that we've got to get in the right place. You're talking there about contracts. Mm-hmm. Just from the headlines alone then, what are the key areas, without the detail, but what are the key areas that we should be aware of? Well,
contracts, as we've discussed, trademarks, employee situations, data protection, currency risk. Currency risk is quite a big one because when we actually leave, as we've already seen, the currency fluctuate anyway between the EU and the pound and the dollar. What's going to be happening then? We need to be prepared and ready for that because there could be cost implications to the companies in this country.
So what then is the process that you're proposing at the moment? And we kind of touched on it with Christian. Is the process that in the same way if we were taking over another company or we were buying into another organisation, we would sit down with them and we would do due diligence?
That's exactly it.
So just explain to me the kind of process that we're looking at here.
You go through all of the company's documents and data. You look at the way that the company operates, you look at their suppliers, you look at their customers, and you look at the way that they're dealing with all of them.
And what are you looking for? What is it that you're looking for when you're doing that? If you're looking, shall we say, at, you've mentioned contracts, and we can talk a little bit more about that in just a moment or so, but, you know, we're looking at contracts, there can be fundamentals there. Copyright, trademarks and things like that. What is it that we're trying to do? Are we trying to protect ourselves, or are we just trying to get an awareness of what potentially could be at risk?
Both of those. You're trying to protect yourself, and you're also trying to make certain that you've got all of the cost implications under control for when 2019 hits, because it may well be that at the moment, so for example, companies do their budgets year on year. but you've got to cost in exactly how you're going to be handling data protection, for example, the contracts and so on, so that you are ready for 2019 and you haven't left it to the last minute.
Now, I know you've been out and about and you've been talking to a few different companies and businesses. When you go out and you're talking to them, do you think business owners, be it small entrepreneurships or whatever, do you think that they're really signed up to it yet? Are they aware that there is going to be this transitional period? Okay, we all talk about Article 50 not being triggered yet, so we're kind of all on the starting blocks. But do you think business owners are aware that there is going to be this process which we're going to have to function and carry out rather quickly when it starts? I know they say it's going to take 10 years to unpick the EU from the legislative regulations that we've got here in the UK, but the effect on businesses surely is going to be a lot quicker than that.
It is going to be a lot quicker than that. And if you think about the fact that an awful lot of our legislation is EU legislation at the moment, the general consensus of opinion is that the unpicking won't start immediately. But it could well do, just to protect British businesses. And if you think about when we actually voted, and one of the problems that we had in this country, and one of the reasons why we voted to leave Europe, especially for small businesses, was the red tape that is attached to businesses, and they want it gone. Now, that means an unpicking of various rules and regulations that affect business nowadays, but it's going to take a while for those to actually come into force, and it may well be in 2019. An awful lot of it stays in place for now. But we need to be ready for the fact that eventually things will change. So with regard to EU legislation, between now and 2019, we are still governed by EU legislation and any new EU legislation. So for example, the new General Data Protection Regulations that will come in May 2018, they will actually be relevant to us. We have to abide by those regulations, because we don't leave until 2019, and even when we leave, we've still got to abide by those regulations if we want to trade with EU countries.
We band around the word due diligence a little bit, and for those people that don't know, I mean, everybody's heard the expression due diligence. It's easy for me to say, but in the context, a traditional process of due diligence, if you were purchasing a company, what kind of things then would you be looking at? You
would look at every facet of the company. So you would look at their HR issues, the employees that they have.
For example, what kind of things?
Well, for example, with the employees, it may well be that they have employees from Europe working for them, and they may no longer have the right to stay in this country once we've triggered. Yeah,
but what I'm saying is just traditional due diligence. If I'm purchasing another company, the due diligence process that I go through, what does that mean? If I'm just buying another company when it comes to due diligence, what's the difference?
If you're just buying another company, then what you're looking at is you're looking at all the contracts, and you are looking at all of the contracts because you need to make absolutely certain that when you pay over the money to buy that business, that you are not setting yourself up for any issues that may come up later. There might be disputes, for example, on contracts that the people that you're buying haven't made clear, and so you may well be in for court issues, perhaps.
So fundamentally, due diligence then is from what you've said, and from what I understand, you are effectively protecting your investment, be it monetary or in time or in the business. This is about protection. Do your due diligence right and be in a position of knowledge.
To be ready.
All right.
To be ready for 2019.
All right, so let's work our way down. We've got a number of questions interestingly, we've also had tweeted in on this. You alluded to contracts a little bit back. What should they be looking for? What are going to be the key areas in contracts that they should be aware of?
Well, if they've already got long-term contracts, for example, as I said, say somebody took out a 5-year contract last year, that means that in 2019, when we leave Europe, that contract will probably be governed by an awful lot of EU law. Therefore, you've got to have a look through that contract and make absolutely certain that when we leave the EU, that there isn't anything in that contract that could mean that we are in breach of that contract. And if there is a possibility of breach at that moment, you need to be renegotiating your contract ahead of time.
Now, are we talking lawyer legalese here? Is this something that the average business owner could do if he has the time? Or is it a case that this really does have to be at least looked at by somebody who has got a legal mind or whatever?
If you want to be totally protected, it should be looked at by a lawyer. There's nothing to stop you from looking at it generally yourself and bringing to the attention of your legal team, perhaps, that you think that there is an issue and could they please check it. But you should definitely have everything, if it's being rewritten, definitely by a lawyer. And
even though we're a few years out and we're not quite certain what the legislation is going to say when it comes to Article 50 and Brexit, it's still something we should be aware of? Well,
it is really, because you say that we're a few years out, but one of the things that I would say to you is, do you remember the 2012 Olympics? It's like it was just yesterday.
Indeed.
It was 4 years ago.
So you feel that this could be something that we could end up thinking we've got loads of time,
yes,
and then it's tomorrow?
Panicking at the end.
All right. What about how, when we're leaving the EU, how is it going to affect employees? Will it affect both UK resident employees and also EU employees?
Well, let's take UK resident employees first of all. If they are born in the UK and they are UK resident, they're fine. But what the companies need to look at is it now going to cost them money if they're dealing in Europe to pay for visas? It's going to cost them more money to send their people abroad, and of course, by that time as well, it may well be that flights are going to cost an awful lot more money, but mainly the visa issue. We need to be looking at that because we don't know what our government is going to negotiate with the EU, and it may well be quite costly to us.
All right, well, listen, hold on to that thought for one moment. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more. It is all about being aware of what the possible consequences would be. I know this whole thing feels like you are second guessing at the moment, but we'll discuss a little bit more the things you should be aware of when it comes to doing due diligence in your organisation for Brexit and being ready for Brexit. More to come. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company as always. Lovely to have you with us. We are live, of course, today. We're talking about all things around being ready for Brexit. We're not talking about Brexit itself. We're talking about being ready for it, being prepared for the potential, the possible outcomes. So often, we were talking, I think, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the Data Protection Act, which is going to be coming in next year, in fact, May 2018. And the situation that we found there, of course, is that there's going to be a lot of work leading right up to it. It's going to have big implications right across the board. And they implemented something very similar to this in Canada. And the 2 or 3 months prior to it becoming law, all sorts of things were going on. There seemed to be just general confusion about what the implementation of this particular law would mean when it came to trading on the internet, or at least having data, your data protection across the internet. So we mustn't be in a similar situation when it comes to Brexit, when that does finally arrive. Anyway, that was on a previous program. Talking about previous programs, last week we had Nikki Creel in the studio. She was talking about social media training, and also she was talking about converting conversations to customers. All very well having a big database of people in your Filofax or on your database, but how do you turn those meetings, that networking event, that person that you met, that LinkedIn contact that you have, how do you turn them from being, well, just somebody that you've got in your Rolodex into somebody who's actually a client, is doing business with you? How do you go about doing that? Is there a process that you take them through? It's a fascinating show. If you want to find out more, you can watch the entire program. But just to give you a bit of a taster, here's Nikki Creel from last week's edition of Business Connections Live. You're watching Business Connections Live. Steve Hunter with you here, and my guest on today's show is Nikki Creel. She's the author of a brand new book that's just recently been published, Converting Conversations to Customers.
I think it's very unlikely that somebody in this day and age would not have heard of social media now. But it's amazing how many small businesses still haven't adopted it properly, or they're doing social media because somebody says they have to, so they set up an account. Social media is more of a long haul game, and it's not just marketing. It's also, it will help your sales, it can help customer service, it will help you to find out more about your customers. There's so much more that it does than just broadcasting your message. I think you need to, whatever you do, you need to focus on your customer, and you need to think as they would think, rather than broadcasting how you want. So if I had to give one tip right now, I'd say the most important thing you can do is have the word you used as many times as possible. Because when you have a sentence with the word you in it, it means you're actually thinking about the person who's reading your post. So if you have conversations, but other people can watch how you interact, and it gives people a flavour of who you are when they can see how you respond to people. So a lot of my business has come through Twitter. You can't always necessarily say, I've had a tweet, that tweet led to business. It's built up relationships over a period of time. Well, it's looking at, and the term is really social selling, so how to sell without being salesy, but using social media platforms as a way to engage with people. So with this one, I've actually concentrated on LinkedIn and Twitter as the main platforms. So when I've talked about personal branding, I've looked at how to do that. So this is why you need it, but also this is how to do it. Attracting is the nice thing. And when I talk about attracting, it is about getting the right people to you, so that you get phone calls, you get emails from people who want to work with you because they've pre-qualified themselves. They've decided they want to work with you. I think they work incredibly powerfully together, and that's why I've focused on the two, because some people will just concentrate on LinkedIn for business, and they'll ignore Twitter. But say for LinkedIn, your connecting etiquette, you have to go through a lot more loops, and it's a lot more to get somebody to connect with you, because there's a mutual connection. There's a certain etiquette that's involved with it, whereas on Twitter you can just find somebody's Twitter account and start tweeting with them. Most small businesses don't use CRM systems, which are customer relation management software, to help you do it. So on something like Twitter or LinkedIn, it's possible to be connected to a large number of people, but not to have a relationship with people. So it's like, my first step would be make sure that you're connected with your existing customers. I think, well, it's those touch points, and quite a lot of touch points can occur on social media. So for example, on LinkedIn or Twitter, just by liking somebody's post or adding a comment, this is on LinkedIn, sharing something of theirs, you're building a relationship with people. One thing I would like to mention as well is Twitter lists, is actually putting people into lists of people, lists, so you can focus on certain groups of people, because you cannot concentrate on large numbers of people. So if you found the right people using LinkedIn and Twitter that you want to engage with, by putting them on a list, and LinkedIn's actually got a built-in CRM system, a little simple one, so you can actually put reminders to contact people, and you can make notes about people within LinkedIn itself. Hi, I'm Nikki Creel, social media coach, trainer and author of I'm so used to saying my How to Twitter for Business Success. Converting conversations to customers. I really think it's important to build one-to-one relationships with people, and don't forget that human relationships are where your business is, and it's forming that bond. And what I really like people to do is to work out show people how to do it using social media as a tool, so that they can actually grow their business through building relationships that are profitable.
Nikki Creel, an absolutely fantastic programme. If you do get an opportunity, do watch it. You'll find it on our website at businessconnectionslive.com. And don't forget, there's over 200 hours of great business programmes there, produced especially for you, and they're completely free. By the way, if you want to get hold of Nikki's book, here it is. Converting conversions to customers, or conversations rather, to customers. Nicky Creel's book is a fantastic read, and it's one of those books where it is cram-packed. He says, opening it on a page where there's not very much information. But look at that, cram-packed full of info that's going to be useful to your business. The Essential Guide to Social Media Sales Success, and that's available on Amazon as well. Incidentally, if you're enjoying today's program and you'd like a program just like this one for your organisation, why don't you get in contact with us here at Business Connections Live? It really is very, very easy. This is going to be very strange because she's sitting next to me. You can email us here at studio@businessconnectionslive.com. If you want, you can either give myself or Linda a call on 01784 256 777. That's our dog and bone number. If you want to follow our stream of consciousness, then, well, why don't you follow us on Twitter at BCL Business TV? Watch out for the hashtag at BCL Business TV as well. A great way of getting all the information into one place. And we're really, really impressed by Facebook too. You can find our Facebook page and you can watch the programs live on Facebook Live there each and every week. And if you don't want to do any of that, you just want to go to our website, simply go to www.businessconnectionslive.com, where you'll find over, as I said, 200 hours of free business advice and programs. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Linda Bazant. We're talking about what you should be doing when it comes to, in inverted commas, due diligence for Brexit. Linda is a lawyer and a consultant, and she felt it was important to come in on the programme today and to discuss what you should be thinking about and what you should be contemplating when it comes to getting your organisation or your business ready for Brexit. It's a very, very important time. Now, we both know, as we said, Article 50 hasn't been triggered yet. We both know that. But do you think that when Article 50 is triggered, there will be a bit of a rush? Will we be headless chickens for a few moments, running around all over the place, wondering what we should and what we shouldn't be doing?
Well, we don't need to be headless chickens. I think if we realise now that we've got to do something, because although there has been an issue with triggering Article 50, it will be triggered. Be it in March or perhaps later on next year, it will be triggered, because the issue wasn't about overturning the referendum. It was about whether Parliament should be involved in the triggering of Article 50. And of course the Supreme Court will actually be deciding that in December. So it's not if, it's when. And we need to be ready for it now. So everybody that's hanging on for the decision, that's fine, but you need to be
looking at your business. It isn't going to be turned around.
No.
If you hold your breath waiting for it to be repealed, it ain't going to happen.
That's not going to happen. The British people have spoken. That's what they want. And the judges are not trying to say we're going to repeal it. They're saying we need to do it properly, and quite rightly so.
Which kind of leads nicely on to the question about EU legislation that's already there. First of all, the EU legislation that's already been implemented and is part of our law. What happens to that? What happens to new EU legislation that's coming along, for instance, the Data Protection Act that is just around the corner? What happens about that? At the point of Brexit, do we drop out of that, or does that become part of British law, or what happens? What should we be aware of there? Right,
well, with regard to EU legislation that's already a part of British law, for quite some time that will remain part of British law, because it's going to take an awfully long time to unpick. And it may well be that some of the EU legislation we're actually quite happy with and we want to keep. But with regard to the Data Protection Act, that comes into force in May 2018 when we are still members of the EU. Now, there is a consensus of opinion that believes that even when we leave, we will continue to be governed by that particular regulation, because it is an all-encompassing belt and braces piece of legislation. And also, if we were to repeal it here, it would cause businesses in this country problems in dealing with businesses in Europe, because they would insist in that level of data protection. If we can't say that we can provide it, we won't be able to deal with them.
Off the other laws then, is it kind of accepted that nearly lock, stock and barrel we'll just take that and make that as part of our own national law? So all the legislation is out there, or are there things that people are talking about at the moment that perhaps that we wouldn't be part of British law?
Now that's interesting, because the general consensus of opinion is that we will keep all of the laws. However, when you think about the reasons why we voted to leave Brexit, as I'd said before, businesses were saying there was an issue with red tape. So they've got to address the red tape issues. Even if an awful lot of EU law is something we're going to keep, I think businesses will be lobbying government to say, this is what we wanted, you haven't dealt with it, and we need you to deal with it now.
So this is going to get more and more confusing then, isn't it?
Yes, I'm afraid it is.
So is there an element then, a certainty of the things that will be affected when it does come to Brexit? So everybody we've spoken to kind of says, sit back, relax, think of England, because it's still a long way off. But from what you're saying, there are key things within the current law, if we do take it to all intents and purposes lock, stock and barrel, that we do know that we're going to have to address.
Yes.
Is it the terminology that changes, or is it the actual function of the law that changes?
The function of the law. So one of the issues, for example, is the Human Rights Act. An awful lot of people in this country have a problem with some of the Human Rights Act. We're not saying we don't want there to be human rights, but I think that they think that perhaps it's just a little bit too much and they want it changed. And also with the way that we deal with businesses generally, an awful lot of red tape, especially for small businesses, and they want it removed.
So take that away. So when you're looking then at this due diligence for Brexit, what are you looking for there? You've talked about the employment contract, which is probably going to be one of the cornerstones of any work that you would be doing, making certain that the employees are right. But what other areas are we going to be looking at that could well be affected by Brexit? Oh,
tax issues, VAT issues, huge red tape with regard to tax and VAT, and PAYE and insurance, which obviously affects employees. And businesses are crying out for that to be simplified.
What about things like health and safety? Is that another area? So that's kind of one of the other soft skills, isn't it, within businesses? Health and safety, is that going to be a big issue, do you think? Or do you think we will take a lead from Europe on this?
I think that we will probably revisit our health and safety laws, although they are very robust. But I think that you'll find, so for example, with I know it's not business, but the issue with conkers and children playing conkers and that they should be wearing goggles and so on, it's just nonsense. And even the health and safety executive will say to you in some instances, that isn't what we meant.
Do you think that kind of, I love the expression, if anybody is watching in Brussels, that nonsense, but that kind of nonsense, as you described it, are we part of it or are we outside of it? Is that the kind of nonsense that could end up being legislated?
But one of the issues that we have is the way that we interpret that legislation. And as I've said, health and safety issues are interpreted by some companies more prudently than others. And it's not normally until we have a health and safety investigation that the health and safety executive will make clear exactly what a piece of legislation actually means.
And that interpretation then, it's across language and it's across international borders. So is it interpretation which is the problem as opposed to the law itself?
Generally speaking, people abide by the law, but there are some companies and some businesses who will actually reinterpret what the lawyers actually meant, what our legislative actually meant.
Let's move on to another subject. I mean, you talked earlier on as well about the other areas. So we've got employment. What about things that businesses come up against all the time? Copyright protection, trademarks and things like that, patents. What do we have to do about that? Are we not covered by having a European patent, a European trademark? I know that Christian, when he was here, was talking about that. But isn't there if I've got a European trademark, surely if I have it, once we're through Brexit, surely that trademark, because it is a European trademark, still stands in Europe. And if we start trying to do something here in the UK, or somebody else tries to start using our trademark in the UK, there is history there now, isn't there? There is history, and what the government are supposedly looking at is a transitional period whereby EU trademarks that we've already got still stand with regard to UK law. But what the advice is to businesses now that are applying for trademarks is apply for your EU trademark and apply for a UK one. Do that now before 2019. And this is something that we've got to be aware of, isn't it? This is something that's going to be laid out in a list of things to do. Intellectual property, all of that sort of thing.
sensibly, if we're looking at it from a common sense point of view, when our government negotiate the terms of our exit, that's something that they will actually be looking at, and they will, I would say, look at an easing in of that type of legislation, purely because it won't just cause us problems, it will cause a lot of the EU countries problems as well, with regard to enforcement of trademarks and so on.
It seems to be that there's going to be a whole number of things that the small business owner has got to be aware of as it comes down the line, and hence the reason we're talking about the due diligence for Brexit. But there's obviously going to be a cost in that. Who carries the cost? Will the government carry the cost? And pigs may fly, or is it the small business will have to carry the cost? Or are we? Do you think a lot of businesses will be in a situation, well, because they don't know enough to be wrong, they'll just be very wrong, and it will just catch them out?
Now, that may well be an issue, which would be unfortunate. At the moment, the way that it stands is that each business will have to pick up the tab. But once the negotiations have gone through and we reach 2019, we don't know what government initiatives there will be. There may well be a government initiative that helps the smaller business, for example, by way of grants, that sort of thing, or just help generally from various different companies that have been set up possibly by the government to help businesses to do the transformation.
Do you think that it is going to be necessary within organisations to have? I mean, we talked about the whole post Brexit. We talked about the data protection element a little while back, and there they were talking about to have an individual who would be the nominated data protection officer within an organisation or a business. Do you think it's essential then to have somebody at least is taking responsibility within an organisation for Brexit?
Well, the way that the legislation works is that there needs to be somebody there in a company that has 250 or more employees. But with the GDPR, that's going to become tighter. And there's no reason why, as a business owner, you can't also be the data controller. There's no reason why you can't be. But you just need to make sure that all of your legislation is in place, your procedures are in place, and that all of your employees understand exactly what the rules are and what happens if they break any of the rules.
But the point I was asking was that while that is about the data protection, for Brexit itself, do you need someone who is comparable to the data protection officer? Do you need a Brexit officer?
Dependent again on the size of your business, but of course the trouble is for small business, they can't afford a Brexit officer. So it may well be that they have to go for outside resource that can help them to get ready, and maybe just once a month run past each other any issues that may have arisen. So for the smaller businesses, they're going to need outside help. They may need to subcontract it out once a week, once a month. But I would say for smaller businesses, they don't need somebody that they have to employ specifically for that, although they may need to initially once they're getting ready for it.
All right, we'll come back to that. Hold that thought for just a moment. We've got more to come with Linda Bazant talking about Brexit and due diligence for Brexit in just a few minutes on this edition of Business Connections Live. Well, I hope you're enjoying today's program. It's an absolutely fascinating insight. As we've said, we've done a number of programs concerning the whole element, the whole area of Brexit. We had Christian Bajaram in. He's a partner with EBL Miller Rosenfeld. He was talking about the triggering of Article 50. In fact, these two programs actually sit very much hand in hand, and I think that's what's important about it. Christian at the time was saying that, you know, sit back, relax, take it easy, nothing's going to happen immediately. But one thing that we can be certain about is that something is going to happen. It may not be a tsunami wave that hits us and we feel the impact like that. It may just creep up on our organisations. We will be aware it's coming. There is no doubt about that. But the thing about it is that we have got to be prepared for it. Every business has got to be prepared for the potential impact. And the thing is, we're not talking about negative impacts, depending on what actually happens on the world trade level. I mean, remember when we were talking to Christian, he was sort of saying that the options that we've got is we'll have open trade with Europe, we could have open trade with America, or the ultimate fallback where nothing seems to get agreed. We have we're part of the World Trade Organization, which doesn't seem such a bad place to be if you're sitting in my shoes. But it does show that there are a number of places, and you as a business, you have to be very, very prepared, very, very ready to take up the mantle and start running with it the moment you realise which way it's going, and hence the reason for this whole element when it comes to sitting back and being prepared. That due diligence for Brexit is really, really important. The advice that Christian actually gave was really complements very nicely to what Linda is saying today. And just to give you a bit of a reminder, the key takeaways that Christian had from the programme, here's what he said on Business Connections Live.
So this is Christian Björndrum from EBL Miller Rosenfelk. I'm a partner of the firm of solicitors. I would say keep calm and carry on. I think there's a lot of political discussions at the moment on what will happen in the future. The truth is nobody really knows. There's going to be some time until something actually happens. The Article 50 is going to be triggered by March, the PM has said. After that, we'll probably have a period of 2 years to negotiate a deal. If we don't agree a deal, we'll leave automatically. I think what business should do in the meantime is they should do a bit of due diligence, look into their own business. You have contracts, trademarks, employees, you have tax issues, various issues that you need to look into that could be applicable or could be an opportunity or a threat in the future. And I think it's important to assess what they are today so you're prepared.
I mean, there are going to be different levels of this, Linda, aren't there? So, you know, Christian Bajaram there talking about what you need to be aware of. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company with us today. My guest on today's show is Linda Bazant. She's a lawyer and also a consultant when it comes to due diligence for Brexit. And a couple of weeks ago, as I said, we were listening to Christian Bajaram, and he kind of sort of said, sit back, relax, take it easy. But what... This is going to be a festival, isn't it? It's going to be a real feast for lawyers, isn't it? There's going to be a lot of, I mean, I know you're a lawyer in your own right, but there is a lot of work out there that you guys are going to have to be doing to make certain that we are in a legal position for this to actually pass smoothly.
Yes, and the mere fact that lawyers are talking about it now just shows that they're already thinking about it. And they're sorting out their own due diligence to make sure that they're ready to be able to service their clients. Indeed, in some of the much bigger companies, the big pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing, for example, teams of lawyers are already going in doing due diligence for them. And a lot of the big companies are also employing a specific Brexit person that may even sit on the board of those businesses. But what we're talking about today is not the bigger business. We're talking about smaller business who can't afford to do that and therefore need to go outside for outside help.
Is there a process then, or is there a procedure where what you do is that you do your due diligence, somebody like yourself or another consultant will come in, sit down, work their way through all of this, and then once you've worked your way through it, what you then do is, on behalf of the business that you're with, you present that to a Christian Bajaram who will rubber stamp it? Or is it something that a business, if they've got the nous, they could sit down themselves, they could work their way through and they could do it all themselves?
No, you wouldn't bypass the client. You'd actually go through everything that you've sourced with the client initially and say, here are my findings, here are my recommendations, here are the things that your staff can do themselves, but here are the issues that you really need to go to outside lawyers with.
Because let's just remind, I mean, the lawyers who are specialising in this will be quite expensive.
They will be.
Was that a sweeping statement? I'm allowed sweeping statements. I mean, will it be horses for courses? Different. I mean, will there be solicitors out there who will specialise in this, and yes, they too will be able to give legal advice? So there will be a range of legal services that are available. There
will be a range of legal services that are available in the same way that, for example, if you were buying a house, there are different conveyancing lawyers that you can go to. What we're looking at here is that, yes, for very large corporates, they will have a team of lawyers that will be helping them and will be revising all of their contracts and so on. But for the smaller business, they need somebody that can come in, that can work with them Not somebody that just comes up with a list and says, well, here it is. You need to sit down with the business owner afterwards and say, here are the issues that I have found. Here are my recommendations. Is there anything else that you would like me to do that I can help you with? If they're general procedural issues, for example. But then if it's renegotiation of a contract, especially one that is an international contract, that needs to be done by a lawyer, which perhaps the consultant can recommend.
When we were talking about the data protection regulations that are coming in, we kind of alluded, we kind of said that due to the fact that the regulations were being introduced, particularly when they saw it in Canada, it saw a reduction in the number of people that were on other people's databases, and because of that reduction, the databases became actually more effective and became more valuable because they were proper databases. Is this a terrific, or is it a bad, is it a good opportunity for businesses to maybe to revisit their procedures, to visit their way their business operates, to visit their organisational structure, to make it a bit maybe more streamlined? I'm not saying get rid of people, but I'm saying make it streamlined, make it more focused, and make it more adaptable, or maybe more suitable for the 21st century and into the future.
I think that with regards to companies generally, they need to be looking at streamlining, as you said, but it isn't about people. It can be about data. How many files have you actually got in your computer system that you can really purge? And now's the opportunity to do it. And it's really important for businesses to look at this as an opportunity and not an issue that's going to cost them money or a challenge. The fact that they can actually go through all of their data and just have a bit of a tidy, really, I think is really...
There's nothing like a bit of a tidy, that's what I say. But when you look back at the similarities between what you've done in the past when it comes to due diligence on the purchase of an organisation, when it comes to due diligence on what you're doing for Brexit, the process, I don't think a lot of people understand what the clear process is, and I know it's, yeah, you've got to look at this, you've got to look at that, but what kind of timescale are businesses looking at? What kind of information, how do they prepare themselves to be ready for that due diligence? What do they need to put their hands on? What documentation, what files, what should they be doing in preparation even for someone like yourself coming in?
Well, the consultant comes into their own here in as much as they would go into the business initially and talk through the business with the business owner, because you can't do due diligence on a business that you don't really know anything about. So it's very important to find out what the business does, where it trades, that sort of thing, and then just sit with people and find out what they do, and then you're in a position where you can go to the business owner and say, right, okay, I need this information. And that's just a starting point, because it may well be that once you've gone through that information, there is additional secondary information that you need to back up what you've already got. So it's not as easy as just going in and saying, I can do your due diligence. You need to know about the business before you can start.
What kind of timescales do you think companies will be looking at, or is that as long as a piece of string? Well,
it's as long as a piece of string, but going back to your issue about the Canadian data protection, one of the problems that they had is because all of a sudden the businesses in Canada suddenly realised that they were going to be governed by their new data protection rules. They rushed out emails to all of the people they had on their database saying, would you please opt in now, and crash people's databases because they did it right at the last minute. And also, people that they're talking to haven't got time to opt in. They've got other things to do. You need to do it now. So if you start now, it's a gradual process leading up to 2019. You're not racing around at the last minute trying to do a panic.
By the way, if you're wondering how long a piece of string is, it's 27.5 inches. I measured it once. And it's an EU measure, apparently. The legislation has indeed been passed. Thank you very much for that. But it could change after that we finally do leave Brexit like that. Very good indeed. Okay, so it really is. It's as long as it takes, and it's as and the job depending on how big it is. Are there different stages within the process as well? Is it a case, it's a bit like asking, is there due diligence on due diligence? Is it a case that what happens is that the businesses should be fairly quickly able to ascertain what they need to be doing at a top level, first of all? Is there documentation for that? Is there a way forward where they can see what the key things are they should be looking at? I suppose the question is, at what point do they call someone like yourself in?
In bigger businesses, I would say yes. In smaller businesses, it all depends on how they keep their records. If they're not particularly good at keeping their records, purely because it's a small business and the person that runs the business is so busy concentrating on what he sells for a living or the service that he gives for a living, he may not really have been taking care of all of his data properly and all of his contracts and so on. So there might be a big job in just trying to pull them all together to find out where everything is.
From what you've read and from what you've seen, what do you perceive may well be the biggest issue? I mean, I'm not going to hold you to it, but you know, obviously, if you've got multinationals working in your organisation, that's obviously going to bring its own raft of problems. Because I don't know, if we leave, and what the legislation will be. Will we need sort of work permits and things like that for people that are coming in from Europe? We don't really know at the moment what the borders are going to be doing as well. No. So it's just trying to understand as well that is it a perhaps list?
It is a perhaps list, but if you go back to talking about people that might need visas, for example, businesses need to understand that they need to cost that out. How much is it going to cost them? How much might it cost them? Because we're not sure at the moment. At least in your budgets for the next couple of years, build it in. Because if it isn't going to be an issue, it's not going to cost you money. But if it is, you've got to scramble around and find that money at the last minute.
And of course that's going to implement or get involved when it comes to your business plan and what the long-term figures are going to be when it comes to that. How difficult do you think this is actually going to be? Do you think it is something that, I mean, obviously we're going to get through it, but do you think a lot of companies, it could end up damaging a lot of organisations, a lot of businesses, if they don't get it right? Or is it just going to be something that, well, you know, it will happen and it'll move on?
No, I think there are going to be casualties. There are going to be casualties of the people that just decided it didn't matter, and it does matter, and you need to look at it now. For example, for smaller businesses, they may well sit back and think, well, I don't deal with Europe anyway. Well, you might not, but what about your suppliers? What about your customers?
But is it the place of the, I mean, is it the place of one business to be telling another business? Is it a case that we're going to be all looking that we are Brexit approved? Boom.
Well, yes.
We have got the stamp on it. Or is it, you know, if, for instance, when we were talking about the data protection thing, one of the issues that we had there was that a lot of people use tools, the autoresponders, the customer relationship management software. Surely that is the responsibility of the software developer and writer to make certain that their software is fit for purpose.
Yes, and I would agree with you there, but how many autoresponders have already written to people in this country, to their customers, to say, don't worry, we've got it in hand?
None.
Exactly.
And on that bombshell, so if you are out there and you are a software developer, and the thing is that depending what country the software is written, it's quite interesting. Some of the American software, the likes of autoresponder, Aweber, that they seem to have pretty much this double opt-in all covered when it comes to some of the UK and European manufacturers. They don't. So what customer CRM system are you using at the moment, or autoresponder? Is it covered by that part of the legislation, which of course is coming in? Listen, fascinating insight. If you are thinking to yourself, well, crikey, what does Brexit mean to my organisation? Hopefully this programme today is going to be the programme that's going to be helping you out, at least pointing you in the right direction on this edition of Business Connections Live. And great to have you with us, as always, on a Monday. Don't forget, over 200 hours of great programming. By the way, Linda doing a fantastic job today, answering the key questions that we've had for her. How would you do if somebody came along and they were asking you questions about your business, about your company? Would you be confident in what you were saying? Would you be able to get the key things over shortly, in a short way, succinctly, so that people understood what you're trying to actually tell them? Or would you just burble your way around it and find yourself completely lost? Well, we run a training course and we show people the techniques that they can use when it comes to being interviewed and also how to handle the media. We call it, strange enough, the How to Handle the Media workshop. It's a turnkey training course. You come out, 6 maybe of your employees will join us for a day in the studio. We do TV interview, radio interviews, pieces to camera, location reports. We do all of that the day, and we make the day as relevant to your organisation as we possibly can. We take your press releases. We ask your team back at the office to phone in with their questions. They become part of our phone-in program, and I can tell you that the pretense of doing a program like that very quickly becomes very real, and the sweat starts to trickle down their brow. James Griffin from Iris Software, he joined us with his sales team, in fact, his support sales team. They came on one of our training courses, and he saw it very much as a team building exercise, but also came back after the event and said just how valuable it had been to their organisation to make certain that they knew how to handle the media. Here's what he said.
I'm James Griffin from Iris Software, and my team have just completed the How to Handle the Media workshop. It was a really great course, it was really fun, and it was a really unique way for them to polish their presentation skills and learn how to answer difficult questions under pressure. So I'd highly recommend this to anybody that values those skills and really wants a great day out with their team.
It's our one-day media workshop, How to Handle the Media. If you'd like more information about that, then all you've got to do is contact either myself or Linda Bazant. You can drop us an email at studio@businessconnectionslive.com. You can give us a call. We love talking to people on the phone because you never know what else we can wangle out of you as well, for that matter. 01784 256 777 is our telephone number. Follow our stream of consciousness at BCL Business TV. Don't forget, you can also watch the programme live each and every week on Facebook. We use Facebook Live. Incidentally, we are all over the place. We're like a rash. We're on YouTube, we're on Roku, we're on Blueberry, we're on Stitcher. Doesn't matter what format you want, and we're on iTunes. I tell you what would be a big help if you do watch us on iTunes. If you've got iTunes Player on your PC or your Mac, then you leave a really nice review. We'd really appreciate that, and it is easy. If you go to our website, all you got to do is just click on the link that brings you to our iTunes page. View the page in iTunes. Once you're viewing it in iTunes, find the ratings and reviews button. Click on that. There you go. That'll then take you to this link here that says write a review. Click on that and then say something really nice about the program, how useful you find it, and leave us a 5-star review. And I can promise you that will really help us. But more importantly, it'll also help other business owners as well who are looking for a resource. And remember, the resource is absolutely free. Over 200 hours of free business advice. There are others out there. Not many, but there are others, and they charge you for it. What will they think of next? Absolutely free from us here at Business Connections Live. We're here to support the UK business economy. In fact, we're here to support businesses, well, globally for that matter. So no matter where you are, we look at our analytics. We have viewers in America. We have viewers in China. We have a lot of viewers in China, viewers in Japan, right across Europe, of course, as well. So thank you very much. And the Caribbean. So the Caribbean islands, brilliant. So if you do watch the program, regardless of where you are in the world, and if you have a comment or there's a question you'd like to ask us or one of our experts, get involved. It isn't a one-way thing, it's a two-way thing. If there's a question you'd like us to ask, if there's somebody you think we should talk to, then let us know. Just get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. There's the address once again, studio@businessconnectionslive.com. Incidentally, the website is just businessconnectionslive.com. Like that. There you go. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company as always. My guest on today's show is Linda Bazant. She's a lawyer, but she's also a consultant for companies that want to do due diligence when it comes to Brexit. Here we are, we're heading towards heading towards the instigation, the signing of Article 50, which will start the process. Now, the process, of course, will be over a 2-year period, but the unpicking of the laws, of course, may well take a lot longer than that. What a lot of people are saying is that for that transitional period, I suppose there will be grace, won't there, between Europe and us, or do you think I hesitate at using this expression, but will war break out between Brussels and the United Kingdom?
No, I don't think so. I think sensible heads will prevail eventually. Let's hope so.
Be time.
But going back to James Griffin, who we were just watching there, that's another issue actually that companies need to be aware of, because it's all very well for the business owners to know exactly what's happening with Brexit, but what about their staff? How many of their customers are going to be phoning in and asking questions? How many suppliers? Do the staff know what the answers are? That's an issue that needs to be addressed as well. Do your staff understand exactly what the issues are surrounding your business?
Just incidentally, just in case you missed a bit with James Griffin is a senior manager at a company called Iris, and we run a training course which is called How to Handle the Media, and it's very true. It is all about communicating to your staff. So is there, and
the outside world.
Is it something that is important then that businesses should be doing, that we should be communicating with our staff to explain to them what the consequences could be? And the other question, adding to that, do we think that the consequences are going to be negative, or do we think they're going to be positive?
I think that's entirely up to the company and how they've actually addressed all of the issues leading up to 2019. The whole point is that the business needs to be ready for 2019 in such a way that when the time comes, they've got all their ducks in a row, everything is in place, they're compliant with everything, so they can grasp the opportunities that will be available, which I think will be many.
What would you say to business owners that say, look, we don't know what's going to happen anyway, why should we do any preparation for this?
That's burying your head in the sand and pretending nothing's happening. Nobody knows what's happening, and until the governments start negotiating a deal, we need to think about what might happen just in case.
But does that mean then that if you're doing due diligence on an organisation, is this a movable feast then? Is it the fact that are you not then second-guessing the government on what the negotiation results will be?
I think we're all second-guessing the government just at the moment, and until we trigger Article 50, we're not going to be in a position where we know exactly what's happening. But we can make an educated guess now.
And on that educated guess, then we can actually then action and do something about it.
Yes, we can, and then we're ready to just continue with the business of running our businesses and not racing around at the last minute trying to be compliant with everything.
Had a tweet in asking about, we talked about it earlier on, but just a little bit more clarification on this whole area of trademarks once again. There seems to be some confusion about the fact that I've got a European trademark, I need a UK trademark, I need a European trademark, that trademark won't work over here, that one will work over there. So what is the just a little bit of clarity on that?
Okay, if you've got a European trademark at the moment and there is a legal issue, you can actually go to a European court to talk about that issue. But if we've left Europe and you've still got a European trademark, although you're a UK company, which court do you go to? So it's wise for businesses at the moment to look at their EU trademarks and make sure that they've got a UK one as well.
And is that something that's going to be relatively expensive, or will that be... I've read somewhere that there is talk that they will rubber stamp a European trademark and then make it into a UK trademark.
Yes, they will, but we don't know how long that's actually going to take, that transition. It may happen quite quickly, it may not happen at all for all we know, until somebody comes out and says this is what's going to happen. You just have to be careful and be ready.
When do you think we'll get clarity on it? I know there are lawyers right now charging £600 an hour in groups of 100 going into large multinationals that are preparing them for whatever may come. Is it too early for the small business to be doing that, or is it imperative that we are aware of what may happen?
Well, I think the mere fact that the big businesses are already doing something about it should be an alarm bell to the smaller businesses, because if the big boys are doing it, you need to be doing it too.
And who are we talking to? When we say small business, big business, large business, what kind of... So a large corporate, blue chip organisations...
They're doing it now.
They're doing it now. What size businesses are we talking? Are we talking about the baker, the candlestick maker?
Oh, and bigger than that. I think probably companies with 50, 100 plus people, they need to be looking at it now, and they probably aren't.
And will there be a time when the smaller organisations, the smaller businesses, they too must step back for a moment and consider what the regulations and the implementation of Brexit will mean to them?
Yes, as I said, especially if their customers are bigger customers and they will want to make absolutely certain that any suppliers to them are compliant.
Well, we've talked about a whole series of different areas when it comes to what you should be doing. If you are a small to medium scale enterprise at the moment, if you're an entrepreneurship and you're saying to yourself, you know, the situation that we've got is I needed to be doing something but I'm not quite certain what that something is. Well, maybe this whole element of due diligence. From what I've read as well, as I understand it, the situation will be that most small companies will probably try to get some form of an audit before they do a full-blown report or whatever.
Yes, that's a sensible thing to do.
And what kind of things will be covered on the audit? Is it advice? Is it general advice? Or is there some... Are things looked into on that? Or, you know, is it just a case of here's what you should be aware of, much like this programme, and then the full due diligence is a full document or whatever?
Well, it is, and small things, like I said before, if you're a small business and you think that because you don't deal with Europe yourself, it's not an issue, but maybe somebody can go in and audit your business and say, yes, but as a subcontractor to this company, you do need to be aware and you do need to put things in place because they will expect you to, your contractor will expect you to.
Do you think there will be some form of a seal of Brexit approved?
I think that might be something down the line, but at the moment it's
There's
so
somebody
uncertain,
somewhere
we
going,
just
that
don't
sounds
know.
like a great idea.
Yes, you've just
I can
given
make a
someone a
lot of
good
money out
idea.
of that. Another business opportunity. Listen, it's been a real insight into what you need to be considering. I would watch this programme in association with one of our other programmes that's available on Business Connections Live. By the way, all the programmes are available online at businessconnectionslive.com. If you want to go to the website, over 200 hours of great business programmes. And as you're aware, the programmes are broadcast live every Monday at 12 noon. That's when they're broadcast. And you can watch them either online, you can watch them on Facebook Live. You can also interact with them there as well, for that matter. So as always, if you want to go there and you want to leave your comments and your views about what you've heard, then please be our guests and do that. We always invite all our guests to maybe have some key takeaways for our viewers. We think it's important. At least it's a starting point. I know, as you said already, that we are second guessing, but even though we are second guessing, there is only a limited number of potential outcomes that will happen. It's a bit like, you know, is it going to be on or is it going to be off? So we can be doing this and should be doing this now. We
should really start looking at it now and getting it ready so that we can continue to do the business of running our businesses.
Do not leave it till the very last moment. Linda, we always ask our guests, as I said, to look straight down camera number one, which is that one over there, and say who you are, where you're from, and just give us the key takeaways that we need from today's edition of Business Connections Live.
I'm Linda Bazant, Post Brexit Adviser, and I'm here to advise companies on due diligence that they need to be aware of heading towards 2019. Now, trying to predict the legislative landscape post-Brexit just isn't possible at this stage. However, what is clear is that you need to start your due diligence now and put risk management procedures in place to ensure that you're fully prepared for any changes that may result from the UK government's negotiations with Europe. You need to have an awareness of how much your current business setup is reliant on the EU and how you may need to restructure your business to accommodate any changes. Advanced preparation for the possible cost implications is vital so that they are not a big hit in 2019. Areas to be aware of: contracts, trademarks, employment issues, currency issues, long-term financing, data protection, and termination and force majeure issues. Although there is a 2-year timetable after the triggering of Article 50, a wait-and-see approach could be detrimental to your business. You need to prepare now and do your due diligence now.
Thank you very much, Linda Bazant there. Linda, fantastic show. Really enjoyed it today and really, really interesting. Now, I understand as well that you've put together a website as well that gives some advice and some downloadable bits and pieces there. If you are getting ready for Brexit, then you can go to the website. The website is Linda Bazant, that's Bazant, lindabazant.com. If you go to that particular site, you can get information that may be of assistance to you when it comes to getting your business, your organisation ready for Brexit. As Linda just said, it's all very well we stick our heads in the sand. We all do it. The situation we've got here is this is coming. There is no two ways about it. It is just around the corner. We all have to do something about it. Watch this programme again if you feel there's some of the advice that you've missed there. But also don't forget as well, do watch the Christian Bajaram programme. He's the partner with EBL Miller Rosenfeld of the triggering of Article 50. Once again, the two programmes were very much hand in hand and will give you the inside track, the information that you need to make absolutely certain that you are going to be well and truly prepared for Brexit. And you know, as we said, it is coming, it is around the corner, and it is something that we need to be very, very aware of. Linda, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme today. It's been absolutely fascinating insight. Of course, I work with Linda as well on an ongoing basis. She is part of Business Connections Live. So if you do want to talk to either myself or to Linda Bazant, then you've got all the contact details on our website as well. But from Linda Bazant and myself, thank you very much for watching. And listen, take the word of advice. Be prepared for Brexit. Get that due diligence done. Till we talk again, thank you very much indeed for watching today's programme. You know, a great show. Really enjoyed it today. But before we finish, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do. Next week's show, our guest is going to be Penny Power, OBE founder and CEO of The Business Cafe. We can't wait. I hope she brings some coffee with her. Coming up on future programmes, Mark Werrell from Motorsport. We're going to be talking about corporate sponsorship and how it can help your organisation. Sylvia Baldock, the welcome return of the Lady in Yellow. She's going to be joining us here. Deborah Hume, last time she was on, we were talking neuroscience. She'll be with us once again. From AA Drive Tech, we've got Ali Crump. Polly Buckland's going to be joining us, the Typeface Group. Jackie Jarvis, I saw her a couple of weeks back, Jackie, at an event. Fantastic speaker, you'll really enjoy her. James Potter, the LinkedIn man. Lots to talk about with LinkedIn. Also, those changes in the European Data Protection Act. How's that going to affect LinkedIn and how will it affect people that use LinkedIn when it comes to prospecting? Should we roll those credits? Tom Evans, the author of Practical Mindfulness. All that, and don't forget our Christmas party special on Monday the 19th of December with nearly a real assortment of our previous guests. Till we do it all again, have yourself a great week, and from me, Steve Hunt and Linda Bazant, bye for now.